And we're live. So, all right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm the host of the Crypto Insights Journal YouTube channel, as well as the website Crypto Insights Journal. And joining me today are Cliff Sarkin, COO of Casper Labs, Nick White, COO of Harmony Foundations, and Mark Kenigsberg, founder of Coin Janitor. Mark, I hope I got your last name correct.
Yeah, nicely done, dude.
You have no idea how many times I practiced your last name.
Mark, is that a South African accent?
Yeah, it is.
I'm originally from South Africa. But years and years ago.
What area?
I was born in Joburg.
Oh, okay, cool. Too. Yeah. Now my uncle spent a lot of time with Mandela down in South Africa back when he was still alive. Wow. So I've been trying to get down there for years, actually. All right. So before we get into the meat of why we're here, can we each of you please give an introduction to yourself and your company? Let us know what you're doing, what you're up to. Cliff, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So Cliff Sarkin, coming at you live from my backyard office in Los Angeles. I'm an internet startup guy. I spent 10 years in Silicon Valley before moving to LA 5 years ago, and had heard about Bitcoin and blockchain. I played in like a weekly poker game with a bunch of guys, starting in like 2012, 2013. And my engineering friends were talking about getting into mining. And stupidly, I just thought that they were weird engineers that were somehow getting into gold or coal or something and didn't pay any attention. But it wasn't until 2017 and my last startup was kind of nearing its end, jumped headfirst into the crypto rabbit hole. First at a fund called DNA that was here based in LA doing kind of early stage pre-ICO investments. We probably did like 40 or 50 investments in 2017, 2018. And then one of the projects we started working with was Casper Labs, and we're building the Casper blockchain. I joined in January of last year, so it's been a little more than a year and a half. We're building a brand new layer one blockchain that's based on the CBC Casper protocol, so complete, fully decentralized proof of stake. Basically what Ethereum 3.0 might try to be 5 or 6 years from now, but it's going to take them that long because of all their legacy challenges. We're building it today. Been coding for just under 2 years. Our testnet's live. We just closed, or actually you'll hear about it soon. We're closing a really successful private sale and mainnet launch before the end of the year.
Oh, I think we've lost your audio again, Jason.
Please don't tell me I need to repeat all of that again.
No.
Nick, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm Nick White. I'm co-founder of Harmony Protocol. We're a next generation blockchain. Has a very similar design to ETH 2.0, so that's kind of a good way to think of us, is ETH 2.0 but ready today. So we have staking, we have sharding, our mainnet is live, we have 4 shards. You can convert transactions in 5 seconds. It'll cost you a 10,000th of a cent. So that's really our value proposition, is a decentralized blockchain that is significantly faster and cheaper and ready to scale all the best use cases of blockchain, including DeFi, including gaming. And so I'm really excited to be here today to talk about all those different topics. And we have a grants program. So if anyone's out there that wants to build on a protocol that you won't have to pay 500 GUI gas fees, please get in touch with us. We're really passionate about our developer community. So yeah, just reach out, go to harmony1/grants if you want more information.
High gas fees, whatever do you mean? All right, Mark, what about you?
So I heard about Bitcoin quite a few years ago and started researching it. And the more that I was trying to learn about it, the more I realized there wasn't a lot of layperson information out there. So I started a blog, and I spent more and more time writing the blog, less and less time, doing other things, and started traveling around the world speaking about it. And then in 2017, I sold the business I had and formed Coin Janitor. And the idea is very, very simple. It's that cryptocurrency is great, and it's amazing anyone can create a coin, but it doesn't mean anyone should. And as a result, we're going to end up with a lot of coins that don't really have a use case or value proposition. And my premise, which was a drunk argument in Germany a few years ago, was that shitcoins are basically like satellites in space. We just keep doing them and we think it's no issue. And one day someone's going to go look and we're going to be like, oh no, there's actually a cost to cleaning this up. So the idea is Coin Janitor goes around and takes over projects that have failed. They've left some sort of remnant somewhere in terms of code or legacy systems or community that's kind of been abandoned. And, we amalgamate it into our own, with the idea of that with the economy of scale and, with reduction of coins, we can reduce market dilution and focus on the projects that actually work, as a positive externality.
That's it.
All right. Sorry, guys. Had construction going on. All right. So, everyone, thank you for being here. So, our first topic that I want to get your opinion on. So, the whole point of Money Goes Brrr is in reference to the meme, Money Printer Goes Brrr. So, right now, what we're seeing is just out of control spending through governments and Federal Reserves and banks like never before. So Bitcoin was originally meant in the white paper to be electronic peer-to-peer cash. So do you think that crypto and Bitcoin should be focusing more on being that as opposed to how we currently use it as more of a speculative stock market type thing and just use it as money to replace the current system that we're seeing right now? Cliff, why don't we start with you?
Sorry, just needed to unmute myself. So, I think that people are using Bitcoin as within our industry and outside of it. At DNA, the first foray into the space, we paid our consultants with Bitcoin, and there are things that I use it for, and many people that I know. And so I don't think cryptocurrencies are only speculative. I think we're starting to use them and more, certainly as Bitcoin stays around and is battle tested. It is becoming a form of trade, of currency. But the question is, should it be a replacement? I think that we should just keep using it for what we want to use it for, and let time tell. I think that the more, what we've seen in other industries is that there's invention, and it first starts on the periphery and then eventually becomes more and more mainstream once it's proven out to work. And so whether it's, like equity is eventually leading to like leveraged buyouts or different kinds of credits or derivatives, first start on the fringe, and then the more people use it, the more it becomes accepted to be as is. And we're starting to see it now as, Grayscale and, other massive, Wall Street players begin to take, big stakes in Bitcoin and they never did before. That's the way it's going to happen, is continued use and continued pressure on the system. Those are my first thoughts. I have a few more, but I'll let the other guys go.
Well, no, as you like. Nick, how about you? What do you think?
I think the proposition for cryptocurrencies to become non-sovereign store of value assets is very compelling. That said, I think that that could take time to really transpire, and for Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency to take over from gold, or whether or not the world as like the global financial system is going to tend towards some kind of non-dilutive reserve currency like Bitcoin. I don't know. I can't predict the future, but I can say with strong confidence, high conviction, that either way, we're going to see the digitization of money on blockchain protocols via stablecoins, for example, because the advantages of when you put money into a blockchain, the fact that it becomes programmable, we're only starting to scratch the surface of the kinds of use cases and financial products that can be built out of that. And to me, those use cases and that part of the technology is so compelling that it's going to suck everything in. I think decentralized finance, as it's being called, is going to slowly but surely eat centralized finance. So that's where I would stand on it. I think the monetary base will be competitive, and nation states aren't going to hand it over willingly. So there's going to be a battle there. But I think that whether they like it or not, fiat currencies are going to get tokenized. So we have a revolution on our hands either way.
Right. Well, I mean, once all of these governments start getting into this, they're going to do it via stable coins because it's the easiest way to do it. The volatility isn't there the same way it is with other cryptocurrencies. Mark, what about you? What do you think?
I think that there's a lot of angles to this question, and the guys have touched on a few. So I'm going to focus less on the should aspect, and I think just say two things that I think are self-evident at this point. One is that the current financial system no longer works. It's not to say it never worked, but it's worn out its welcome. Something needs to replace it. And I agree that there'll be some level of digitization, and I think that governments and banks and that will also try and move closer towards the crypto model. And how far they'll get and how soon is a different question, but definitely the old system is gone, just not everyone's realized it yet. And the second thing is that to what extent crypto in its current form or any form replaces, fiat is a question that a lot of people have different opinions. But what we're seeing, which is maybe even more exciting, is it's teaching people that they're allowed to ask, that they're allowed to control their own things, that they don't have to have this appeal to authority and have it be done the way it was always done just because the government said so. So this questioning of what is good money is probably the most interesting result of cryptocurrency rather than even the technology itself. It's the fact that the average person is now saying, what rights do I have when it comes to sovereign financial control?
No, that's a very good point, because, the thing is that right now we have, I think people are seeing what they don't need in their lives. I mean, I think being on constant lockdown for a lot of people, you see what's important and what isn't. And right now we're having to find better ways to take care of ourselves. So, you start to look at how your money is being handled, not only in your own house, but from the outside too. Which leads me to my next question is, I want to get your opinion on this actually, because the most infuriating thing about Money Goes Brrr is the fact that it shows the disregard governments and banks have for our money. They sent out a check for $1,200 in America one time, and that was supposed to be it. That was supposed to take care of us. Well, $1,200 already doesn't go a long way, and then when you're already messing around with the money, devaluing it, that it goes even less. So I wanted to get your opinions on that, and I'll start with you, Nick, about how do you think that anger is going to translate into action for the people? Because I can't see Americans or anyone going along with this for too much longer. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you've touched on a very sensitive nerve. Then that's what I mean. That's where the meme comes from, right? In March of this year, in April, when the Fed was just printing, seemingly without any kind of regard to, you know, sustainability or their balance sheet and the solvency of the Federal Reserve. That's when everyone started saying, "Oh, money printer goes brr," and it kind of made people. It was a joke, but it hides a deeper reality, which is the fact that we as individuals and actually kind of as a global economy have handed over extreme power to the Federal Reserve to basically inflate the money supply. And it's a tool, but ultimately I think it's too powerful for any one person or any one organization to have. And I think with their recklessness, they are sort of only sealing their own fate. And I think as people become more and more aware of the fact that there are alternatives, like cryptocurrencies, that in which there is no governing body, there is no one who can go and print more Bitcoin. It could happen, people could fork it, but it has to be a community-driven event. I think it'll start to become more and more compelling. So to me, I think it's kind of a matter of time before people wake up to that reality. And I think it'll be a net positive. It could cause a lot of sort of disruption in the meantime because the whole global economy is so dependent on the US dollar. But in some ways, and I love this phrase, people will eventually probably take away the printing press from the Fed or from fiat-based currencies around the world. I think it's just a matter of time. It's freedom of money. That's why we're here. And if people have the freedom to choose what money they want to hold, they're going to choose harder currencies. I think that's kind of a no-brainer to some extent.
Right. Cliff, what about you?
I thought those were a lot of great thoughts there. I might be a little less political, and maybe it's the second glass of wine talking, but this topic has infuriated me. What's happened with the stimulus and the way it was executed. Like you mentioned, Jason, $1,200. Not that it means much. We should start there. It's freaking nothing, right? When you talk about the need we have right now, as long as the pandemic has lasted and the shelter in place and how many people it has affected. But you got to talk about the kind of people it's affected, right? The 10 to 15% unemployment, are the service industry and the the folks that are doing work in those kind of industries. First of all, $1,200 is nothing, right? But then you add on top of it how many people actually got it versus shouldn't have gotten it, how many checks were lost, how many people were paid that didn't deserve it, and then when you look at the overall allotment of the first $2 trillion, about a quarter was supposed to go to individuals, but a quarter was designated for big businesses, another 15-20% for small businesses. But we've all heard the stories about how the major industries that just happen to have lots of subsidiaries qualified for the small business part. What this really was just a bailout for Wall Street, right? And we have seen that you just look at the Dow, right? The Dow is still at 28,000, even though it dropped precipitously in the beginning, but after the stimulus it's back up. Like the Dow should be at 18,000 right now, and part of that is a function of who our political leaders are. They're really just the public face of big corporations, so the money just goes back. And so I saw a table somewhere about the top like 10 billionaires. They've done incredibly well this year. We can't say the same for most of us. And so at every point, the decision of who the printed money was intended for, who it actually went to, and how poorly it was managed and distributed, all just reinforces why those of us that are in this industry are here. And just one example is we didn't have the infrastructure to even do this, right? And if we were employing blockchain technology and infrastructure, cryptographically, we could have ensured electronic, payments to exactly who they were supposed to go to, be able to trace it, perfectly. But unfortunately, that's not what the powers, those that are in power, want to happen. But it does shed light on the ways that we can be applying the technologies that we're all building to moments like this. We know we can do it better.
Those are great points. Mark, how about you? What do you think, sir?
I think there's a very interesting relationship between, unrest.
Mark, still with us?
Yeah, do you hear me?
I can hear you, Mark.
Yeah, I can hear you, Mark.
Okay, you guys hear me all?
Yeah, go for it.
You.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
we can't hear you. But we can hear
Cliff, can you hear me?
Yeah, Jay, we can hear you.
Okay. Mark,
Okay.
can you hear? If you can hear me, you might be muted.
We can hear him. It's okay.
Okay, this is weird. I'm
Nick, can you hear me?
I hope that someone else can hear me also.
Yeah, I can hear you, Mark.
I think it's Jason is
Okay.
got a problem with it.
Cliff, say something so we can make sure we can still hear each other, please.
I'm talking right now, but you can't hear me, but everyone else can.
I'm gonna jump up and down on stage to show.
I'm gonna join you.
There we go.
So in the meantime, I'll weigh in on this point.
Just go for it.
Yeah, let's try that again. Mark, let's get your view on the subject.
Okay, so I think that a lot of us in this community, we obviously we get it, and we're upset and angry and whatever, but most of the world doesn't get it yet. They don't really realize what's going on. To understand the real effect of stuff like quantitative easing, you have to actually understand how money works. But I think that there is a very interesting relationship between financial problems, whether we call them crisis or depressions or recessions or whatever other words we choose, and unrest. Whether it's like civil or whether it's like, much more hectic. Look at things like, in France and the Arab Spring and what happened in Greece and Cyprus. Like, all of these things were related in some way or form to money. And there is definitely a relationship. Sometimes it's frustration at, financial system that leads to unrest. Sometimes unrest leads to, financial problems. And we're seeing the beginnings of that in Corona. And often Corona is blamed for the current financial problems. The reality is that the Fed and the government is the cause of the current financial problems. And they're being exacerbated in Corona. And the longer all of this stuff goes on, and the more that the Fed tries to, hide their terrible policy by doing their policy even more, just with fancier names, like the longer this draws out, and it becomes a spring that kind of coils up. And exactly how it's going to release, I don't know. But people aren't going to take it. Now, America has the luxury of being able to subdue its citizens, in a lot of ways, because they have a lot to lose. But it's becoming harder and harder for people to, be safe when it comes to financial situation or future planning or any of this stuff, and that's because of the government's choices. And then when you have things that like affect employment like this, at the same time, you start eroding, the financial basis of everything. Everything gets more precarious. So I definitely think there's a relationship. And I think in some of the, let's say more third world countries will probably start unrest first and then go the other way. But I think we're going to see a tipping point at some point where it's not going to be an isolated event that we look at on the news in some faraway place. It's going to be the whole world turning around in its own way and saying, yeah, no, I'm done. This is enough. Not willing to take this anymore. And I think it's going to be bad. And I think that the far-reaching effects of Corona have not been felt yet from a financial point of view. I think we're nowhere near the end of how bad this is going to get.
Right. Well, and I mean, I've heard the term used called plandemic instead of pandemic, because the way they were able to shut down the economies basically with the snap of the finger, you can't normally do that. You know, it takes time to just stop stuff from happening. So it does beg the question of, okay, did you guys have this as a contingency plan? And if so, when were you going to share it with the rest of us? You know, because because people have been out of work for almost 6 months in a lot of places. So it's like, well, come on. And I think that segues into my next question is, how do we hold governments accountable when they do this? Because the Fed in America, for example, isn't an elected official. So what do you do with that? I mean, you can vote out their boss or the person who appoints them, but the Fed's the Fed. So what do we do? Cliff, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because in America right now, there's a lot of people in the streets, protesting, radical change to the system, but that's only prompting, more authoritarian response. And so, I don't think the only answer is to completely opt out or fight the system. Although I think that there's merit to that. I think you work on multiple fronts. Number one, we have an election coming up, and we have to vote, right? There is a system in place, and if you completely opt out, we can look at a lot of past elections where a lot of people said, forget it. I'm empathetic, or I don't want to participate. But things will get worse that way. And so number one is to vote. Number two, at least in the U.S., we got to figure out ways to get money out of politics. The fact that our members of Congress need to run for re-election every 2 or 6 years, depending if it's the House or the Senate. There's this constant need for money because they're constantly campaigning, and until and unless there is a real alternative for public financing of campaigns, in addition to the current system, which is basically the very wealthy, the institutional leaders who want to maintain and grow their own power are going to fund the campaigns for our elected officials. Nothing's really going to change. So where I come down is to work on multiple fronts, to be building the infrastructure, whether it's monetary or otherwise, in parallel with what's going on, and to be actively involved in the system to make sure that if possible we can put some pressure on the levers and make change on both fronts simultaneously.
That's a great point. Nick, what do you think?
I think the most startling and scary thing is the way that it seems that we're entering a new era of basically modern monetary theory. And I think the fiscal and the monetary policymakers are going to be working together more, and kind of I think that for those of us who are skeptics of MMT is kind of scary. But I don't know, at this point it's kind of people we're painted into a corner, so I'm not sure that there is an alternative other than to sort of face the enormous amount of debt that we're in. So some people talk about like a debt jubilee. I don't know, that would be very interesting. I just don't see the way that the system is set up. It's too hard to change, and there's too many there's too much weight behind it, and I don't know. I that's why I feel like the probably the most direct solution is to opt out, and I think that people are starting to do that, whether it's with gold or with other alternative store value assets. But we'll see.
Right. Well, and Mark, Mark, let me get your opinion for you, and then I want to throw in something about what Nick just said. Mark, what do you think about this?
Okay, I'm in very, very different positions from both Nick and Cliff. And I think there's something to be said for both, but at the end of the day, I think you need to look at the question on individual level versus societal level. And I think that, as cliched as it sounds, but charity begins at home. And I think you need to start taking care of yourself before you can start taking care of a lot of other people. And that means, just getting some things in order. And I agree with Nick that it has to be a multi-pronged approach, but not everyone's going to be able to invest the same amount of resources in each of these different areas. So as cliched as it is, I think the best thing is knowledge, whether that's going to be used to help yourself and your family, to teach other people, to start some grassroots thing, to contact senators, whatever it is, or to, bring about some radical, like, infrastructural level change. I think that we've too long just relied on other people to think for us. And I think just getting a little bit of information is a great start, and will inspire people to do that which each person can, And in terms of the system being too big to change, like, it kind of is right now. But if history's taught us anything, another cliche is, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. The more we can succeed in changing the system, the less drastic that change will be if it comes without our help, If things carry on the way they are, it's going to end badly, But the more we can ease it into a new reality, then the more it can be an incremental change rather than, a regime shift or revolutionary, That's what I think.
Well, and that's a great point. And to hop back to what Nick was saying, during the first round of first nights of the George Floyd riots in America, there was this young man who spoke up, and he was saying that the best way to deal with a system that is unjust is to opt out of it, and the best way to opt out of it is with Bitcoin. And it's a true statement when you think about it, because Bitcoin is already set up to be used in place of the current financial systems in the world. I mean, that's what it was set up to do from day one. So do you think that is the best option? Because, and I'll start with you again, Mark. Should we be trying to get out of this system altogether, or should we hope that one day we'll have leaders, like there are senators and congressmen, at least in the United States and in other countries too, that do embrace cryptocurrency, at least to a point. So do you think that maybe if we elect those people instead of the current batch of politicians we have, that we may see a better financial system? Or do you think we should just cut our losses and live on Bitcoin from now on?
Well, I just want to say, I would love to get on another discussion at some point with you guys, because I'm loving the points, and I think these are big topics, that don't get the kind of justice they deserve in a couple of minutes. But I'll try and not complicate the question, because you've really asked a couple of different questions together, from my personal views on Bitcoin, comparison of money systems, kind of responsibility and accountability of government, people's appeal to authority, and there's some others. There's a whole bunch of different stuff. And I think for most of us in this space, our feeling about, what can we do and what is government's job to take care of us is kind of what got a lot of us excited about, the whole Bitcoin and cryptocurrency thing. So I think that Bitcoin is a fantastic answer to many problems. It is the best we have so far today, and it is the one with the most momentum and chance of success. So if you're looking for any alternative routes, completely or in parallel, you should be Bitcoin. I don't know why anyone wouldn't be in Bitcoin today. That being said, I think a lot of the leaders we have are just junk. They really are junk. But I don't believe that, I don't want to mention specific names like Powell, Bernanke, or anything like that, but, okay, that was like a cheap shot. But no, it's a joke. And the thing is that we could get better leaders, but are we ever going to get good enough leaders? Like, no, I don't think so, you know? So, and I think that if you look at systems other than the monetary system as well, I think the problem goes there too. It's not just isolated that we have good governance and it just so happens on fiscal policy these guys have made mistakes. If you look around everywhere, like the scariest thing for me learning about Bitcoin in the last years is that the government doesn't actually take care of its citizens well enough, you know? Now, it may have at a certain point, or coming from South Africa, where, you know, 1% of the population or 3% of the population was taken care of well, and the remaining 90% was like completely, you know, trashed. It's easy for some people to have a good experience. But one of the challenges we have is the world is full of so many people that have been ignored that just, you know, providing for everyone equally is almost impossible with the current systems because they're all set up to be elitist. So I would say that we should do all, and sorry to kind of, Nick, it was your point. I hope I'm getting the names right. Nick's LA, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, awesome. So about multi-pronged, I think it's here as well. I think we should all go for Bitcoin. We should try and change the system. We should get better officials. But we should realize the limitation of that as well. As soon as you put all of your trust and control and safety in someone else's hands, it's going to end badly, you know? Leaders are never going to be able to take care of you well enough. We should strive for better, but you look at healthcare, you look at other systems, look at education, you know, all of these systems are plagued by the same, you know, inherent toxicity and conflict of interest in terms of incentives. Government is not incentivized to take care of its citizens well. It's incentivized to take care of its citizens well enough to not topple the government, you know? Anyway, that's a bit political, but that's my opinion, you know?
No, after remember that one. That was great. All right, thank you, Mark. All right, Cliff, what do you think?
You know, I think Mark makes some really good points that I want to kind of, you know, take a little further, which is, you know, we can't trust both the systems and the people that they put into power because of the corrupting value of you know, aspects of money and what it took to get there, and where you know, what I'm doing on a daily basis and what Casper is building are the kinds of systems that you know, that mirror the aspects of what we love about Bitcoin, or why we look at it, you know, as a viable, you know, alternative or a way to, you know, opt out and opt into. But there are a lot of other applications for blockchain that you know, that cryptography combined with, you know, compute power where we are today can actually make a difference that is actually democratic.
Right.
And so blockchain isn't just currency. It can, you know, create, it can be a democratizing and egalitarian force for, you know, custody, chain of title, supply chain, proxy votes, voting, you know, in and of itself. And I think that while Bitcoin is showing the world an alternative to our current, you know, fiscal possibilities, I think there are so many other applications, and that if we as an industry start showing that those are also viable alternatives that work better for everyone and not just a few, I think it'll do great things for blockchain as an industry, and I think it'll do better for cryptocurrency because we're showing that the technology applies to multiple industries.
Nice. Nick, what about you?
So I really liked what Mark was saying, and I think ultimately what he said about government being incentivized only to do kind of like do the minimum effort to just maintain power. I get, not power, that's the wrong way to put it, but just to keep people satisfied, right? As long as it takes a lot for people to like completely revolt, right? I don't think we're anywhere near that in the U.S. or a lot of developed nations, but we can see unrest starting to bubble up, and I think it's because of the fact that, like they were saying, a lot of our institutions are kind of elitist by design. They favor certain individuals and certain classes over others, and you know, the recent monetary policy is so favorable for people who actually own assets. If you're a laborer, your income is basically being inflated away. Meanwhile, asset prices are increasing. But if you don't own assets, you're not getting any piece of that. So you know, real wages are just getting further and further depressed. So we're heading more towards that kind of like the labor, people who are more dependent on labor are becoming dissatisfied, and I think the government is going to have to kind of step in to balance that out. And that's where things like UBI become interesting, and because they kind of align with this idea of like, hey, we're going to have modern monetary theory. It's lots of easy money, but maybe we can redistribute wealth in the opposite way, rather than providing, you know, kinds of monetary policy that puts money more in the pocket of people that are already wealthy. We'll have, you know, types of stimulus that will actually make transfer wealth from the rich to the poor. So I don't know, that I'm curious to see if that something like that actually does happen in the next 10 years. I think it's a non-zero chance.
Well, I want to throw out one more question, and it goes along with this the whole thing about money printer goes Brrr. They're printing all this money, but Americans only got $1,200. Some other countries may have gotten some more, maybe less. Where's the rest of this money they're printing going? You notice that they don't seem to want to talk about that. So, Mark, what do you think about that?
I don't want to get too conspiratorial, and you know.
Come on, Mark.
Come on, Mark.
Oh, Mark, you're amongst fellow conspirators.
I'm scared to even make a joke because it's going to get cut into a soundbite, and there's going to be like a meme of me saying the little man abducted me. But
okay, never mind.
No, I think it's clear that there's a lot we're not being told, and I think this is a lot more to do with bailing out a system, you know, than people want to admit. Like that I'll definitely say. But I think one of the reasons it's so easy to, you know, potentially hide this, or, you know, for people to not really appreciate what's going on, is people don't understand money. And I'm not even talking about from a monetary policy perspective, you know, not everyone's an economist, but a lot of people still believe money is physical. It's like coins. It's something you hold in your hand. And money hasn't been physical for a long time. All it is it's an entry in a digital ledger, you know? Now, that's why the argument for Bitcoin is so strong, because all it is an upgraded version of the system we're currently using, you know? Substantially superior, but it is already. A lot of people's resistance to Bitcoin is the idea that, well, it's not real money, you know? How do I see it?
Right.
Like, especially as societies are moving more and more to cashless. But you think about internet banking, you know, over the last couple of decades, internet banking has transformed money completely just into a number on a screen. And that's why this printing, like, how do we know the money was printed? You know, we say printing because it used to physically be printed. But today, when they print it, it's someone sitting at his computer and he goes, yeah, I'm going to add a zero here, you know, boom, hit enter. Does that really exist? You know, is the effect of that money entering or leaving circulation actually anything more than sentiment? You know, okay, I'm just throwing stuff out there. I'll be conspiratorial on the policy side, but I think that, you know, we have lost complete control of our own money as a society. We have a misunderstanding of what it is as individuals, and we have some really terrible fiscal policy, you know. So I guess that's my limited answer to the question, you know?
Well, but you make a good point. I mean, we're talking about money printer go Brrr, but when was the last time anyone actually saw a money printer action and things being added and taken away from it. I mean, it's all computer now. It's all computers now. You know, we see the picture of Steve Mnuchin holding up money, but that money's not going into circulation. It's probably just going to stay wherever it was printed. I mean, Nick, what do you think of this?
I think it brings up a really good point. And that's why people keep talking about central bank digital currencies like they're some kind of revolution. And I don't know. I have to confess, I'm not an expert in all of that stuff. It's definitely not my forte or where I spend a lot of time sort of analyzing or thinking. But to me, like what Mark said, the money is already digital. I mean, when the Fed prints all that money, I mean, all the memes have that like guy, you know, actually physically printing money. And there are these photos of Mnuchin, you know, with huge racks of $100 bills fresh off the press. But the reality is that I think, I don't know, a huge majority of dollars are actually just in digital ledgers. They're centralized. They're not decentralized. They're not blockchain run. But so in that sense, like money already is so intangible and not real. So, but people, there's still this, I think the reason it'll take a while for people to get comfortable with cryptocurrencies, no matter what, it's just, it's so cultural. It's embedded in your psyche. Like you just think of a US dollar, right? And if you've been using that your whole life, like take my grandma who is 95 years old. There's no way she's used a US dollar her whole life. How is she gonna like conceive of the fact that there can be something new or different? It's just too much of a psychological barrier. So anyway, I think that it'll take time, and it takes education. It takes people learning what is money at the end of the day, and not even monetary policy, but like how does a dollar have value? What is value? How do we decide what is valuable? And all those are such fundamental questions that you have to be very open-minded, and you have to be willing to go the distance intellectually to go to the root. And not many people have the discipline to do that. And I think that's why it behooves the community to educate better, because it's taken me a long time even to understand, to get a grip of those things myself. So how can we expect people to just like wake up one day and say, oh yeah, I believe in cryptocurrencies? It's not going to happen.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think back to the first few years of even the modern crypto space, you know, it's only been a couple of years since you didn't need to actually physically type in the long string of characters to send crypto from point A to point B. I mean, it's actually quite easier now than it was even 4 years ago when I first got in. Cliff, we're going to go with you last. So what do you think of this? What do you think?
Well, I mean, we touched on a couple of things. I think, Jason, your question started with like who the real winners, you know, and I think the reason we haven't really spent much time answering that is just it's so obvious. You know, it's Musk and Bezos and Zuckerberg, right? Like increasing their wealth by tens of billions, while 40 million Americans are you know applying for unemployment. So, but it is the answer to your question, which is you know the rich are getting richer, you know, in the worst of times. You know, but getting to the other points that were made, you know, I think that it's just funny how we've gotten to a place where Bitcoin, which is, you know, there's a finite number and there's complete transparency as to how the system works and you know how many more will be added into the system over time, and yet that is seen as the weird thing, where you know a fiscal policy where you know non-elected officials get to decide, and sometimes elected officials, but you know the Fed can change interest rates and print money, and that's seen as normal, right? It's strange how we got here, and I think you know where we go from here is to make is to get from well in the last 4 years where you needed to type in your 46 letter number combo to what we can do today with on Coinbase or on decentralized exchanges, but it needs to be even more user friendly. I think just this week we heard that the Swiss government is now accepting Bitcoin as a form of paying taxes. We just need more of that. The Cash App that allows you to buy and use Bitcoin to trade. It is such a better way fundamentally, but we need to make the user experience much more like what we're used to with swiping our credit card or having it, all of our accounts linked and being able to pay for, groceries or Grubhub. That's where we need to go in order to make it more, get to ubiquity and then get to acceptance.
Nice. Well, I think we'll have to leave it there, guys. This has been a great conversation. So, Mark, Nick, Cliff, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you to the Run the Unicorn team for putting this all together.